There's some people from our last week. Hi. Is my sound good? Can you all hear me clearly? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. So I'm quite new to this Satsang online thingy, and I tried to bring it into a little structure to have a little bit of talking, me talking basically, a little bit of practice, a small meditation or something, and a little bit of Q&A, so you can also interact or just share where you are on the journey, or maybe your obstacles or your beauty. And that way I imagine, I hope that we can build a little bit of a community together, and maybe this will grow, or maybe not. Maybe it stays just us, and that's equally beautiful as well. Yeah, you can have camera on or camera off. For me, it's nice to not speak to a blank screen, but nevertheless, I'm not offended if you just turn the camera off. That's totally fine too. There's also one more person here, joining me for a while at least. Good. So, let's close the eyes and ground for a moment. Take a deep breath. And exhale with a sigh to give your body the signal to relax. Feel where your body touches the ground, where you connect to the earth. Tune for a moment into the experience of your body. And become gently aware of the breath, just flowing naturally in and out. All right then. Stay like you are, or open the eyes and get really comfortable. And every time there's something not clear, you can just type in the chat for me to clarify again. Yeah, please. Hi, Cliff. We even have a far away person joining in. I actually don't know exactly where you're all from. Maybe you can write in the chat where you're from, where you're currently located. That would be lovely, just to have a rough idea. Greece. London. Aberdeen. Okay. Hey, you're both from Boston. Austria. Milano. Yeah, come in. But please close the door behind you.
Because of the mosquitoes.
Newcastle. Greetings to my hometown.
Yes?
All right, so we have a hybrid. We have online and offline. That's why I'm speaking to the screen. Good. Today's teaching is about the 5 layers. Sometimes in, let's say, traditional yoga, if you want.
Yeah.
In traditional yoga teachings, it is differently taught as in the tantric teachings, because the tantrics, they have their own ideas and views, and I will share today the tantric version of the 5 layers of the self. So it's often called the 5 koshas, or pancha koshas, the 5 sheaths. I never know how to speak that word. Layers of the self. And basically, it is a map to understand this whole experience a little better and to not fall into some certain traps that easily come along with misidentifying with one or two of those layers. And we easily in life are drawn to misidentify with one or two of those layers or all of them. And that's why the yogis came up with this teaching, meaning for us, for our mind to understand, okay, that's where I'm at the moment acting, and that's where this suffering comes from, because normally that's the problem. If we don't suffer, we don't have a problem. And once I realize that, I can change my perception of it or my understanding of it and have a more easy or content life. So that's the main goal behind that teaching. But the second goal of that teaching is also to realize, what is my essence? So if you were there in the first satsang we had last week, we spoke about that. So it always refers back to that as well. Like, come back to your essence, understand that. All right. So the first layer is so-called vastu in tantric teachings. And the first layer in the other traditional teachings is already the body. But in Tantra, we have vastu, stuff. Vastu. And that layer of yourself means you identify with the stuff around you. What is stuff? Stuff are objects, things, everything you can touch or probably see, taste, smell. So everything that is somehow tangible. And you now might think, well, that's easy to not misidentify, but imagine this scenario. You sit in a car and you drive and someone else hits you from the side. What is the first thing you say? Oh, you hit me. So the language already reveals, like, in this moment, when someone else hits the car where you sit in, you're like, oh no, you hit me. You identify as your car. So you kind of make this sense of self, you expand it to your belongings, to your things. And suddenly something hit your car and you take it very personal. So then you get out of the car, you start an argument or whatever. At least you call the insurance probably. But you have an impact in your well-being because something or someone hit things, vastu, of yours, which you believe is you. Another good example is you have something you really hold dear, like an item, and you lose that item. You're like devastated, you're sad, you like almost feel like someone took some part of your heart away. Or you have very expensive clothes or something and they get ripped or damaged or dirty. And you're like feeling affected of it. Is anyone having this experience sometimes in life? Maybe. So that is so our normal sense of self is often just the body. So that's me. That's how commonly it's understood. But if we look a bit closer into our experience, we are very fluid in expanding the sense of self into our stuff, into the belongings and the things around us, into the world. And that is the point where the suffering can start, because when I own a lot of things because I've worked hard for it or whatever, and suddenly those things disappear, then we get really affected, we get sad, we get mad, we get angry or whatever, and our peace is disturbed. So that is the part of suffering that comes when we identify with those things, when we feel they are a part of us. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. So, yeah, exactly. When thieves steal things, someone put into the chat. And what can we do? Well, the first thing is to realize with this teaching, for example, oh, I am not that. I am not that. I'm not the stuff that I believe I belong to me or I am. So this realization already gives us the freedom to not suffer so much from it. The emotions may arise, but that's also a practice of rewiring the brain, of seeing, oh, okay, I'm just expanded my idea of self, and now I'm retracting my experience or my idea of self. So it's a training you can do to expand and contract that. Also for the people here in the room, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask or to interrupt me. Right. Let me see. So how can you identify that you are identifying with the stuff? You can watch your thoughts. They are a good, because the mind is playing all those games, so we have to look into the mind most of the times. And when you have thoughts like, oh, I'm super rich, or I'm very poor, that could be already like identifies or pointing towards like you are identifying with your richness or poorness or belongings. So yeah. And when you make your contentment rely on vastu, on this identification with stuff, then your contentment will be easily disturbed from the outside. Someone comes, steals your jewelry or hits your car or something, and your piece is broken. So that's why the yogic says, okay, that's one layer of us, but let's look deeper to see which other layers are there and what is the true self in the end, the deepest layer. So there's a question, is another person also vastu, for example, the near family? Yes. You could also, I don't want you to objectify people, but you could place that into the similar sense of self. Like you identify with your partner, and I had that for many times, that I was too far from a bottle I wanted to reach, and I asked my partner to grab the bottle for me. It's kind of my extension of myself to help myself. And that happens often. Like you ask your partner to do something you actually could do easily by yourself, but you just feel like they are so much me that they should do it or could do it. So totally it can expand to the people around you too. If you own them, sometimes you also have our partners or even kids or parents that we think we own them. They are part of myself. Like they have to do what I think and want, and that's part of your self trying to expand into those layers. Let's go to the second one. The second one is called Deha, and Deha means the body in the tantric teaching. And that's an easy one. Well, not that easy, but that is your physical body. So that's what we normally describe as everything inside our skin. And what is the pitfall or the difficulty when we identify with the body? Well, there's one truth we cannot deny, that the body changes every day and it gets old and it will die at some point. So if you put your self-worth and your identity on top of your body and think that's all you are, you have a big problem, because you get older and you eventually also die. And that's kind of putting yourself up for suffering. There's no way out. If you strongly believe you are that, then there's no way out of having to deal with that. And inevitably there will suffering come, because the body is not always in its best shape. And it's not your fault, or it's just body gets sick sometimes, and you have to maintain a good health and do something for it. Also, when you identify with expressions or thoughts, for example, like I am old, or I'm pretty, or I'm ugly, or I'm young, I'm thin, I'm fat, I'm strong, I'm weak. Those are all expressions or thoughts which point to you identifying with that layer of yourself, the body. And as long as there's no problem, there's no problem. But as soon as if you believe that's the truth, you are your body, someone else comes to you and tells you, oh, you don't look nice, you feel the impact of that, because the belief makes you feel that's what you are. So others have control over your well-being. And the decay of the body has control over your suffering too. And the yogis don't want that. So they say, well, that's one layer, yes. But that's not the essence of what we are. And we have the ability as humans, especially, we have the ability to expand our sense of self, if we want so, to the body or to the things, or to come back to that very ground, which we will talk in the end about. If you have questions, please put them into the chat. And also, regarding the body, according to yoga psychology, it is impossible to identify only with one part of the coin, so to say, meaning I'm just pretty. So you work for it, you go to the gym or whatever you do, and you think like I'm pretty, but you cannot only identify with I'm pretty or beautiful. You accept when you say that, when you believe that truly, you accept the opposite as well, that there exists ugliness, because you have to create the comparison and you have to constantly judge again that you are pretty to not become ugly at the same time. So it's a kind of vicious circle that all the labels come with the opposite polarity, and you have to be aware of that. So a positive thinking is a nice thing to do, and coming to a positive self-image is very healthy, but it's still a self-image which you carry with you. And with that comes a constant reaffirmation you have to do. And if you at some point get tired of that, then maybe it's time to look a little bit deeper, or to expand or contract your sense of self in the yogic ideas. Let's go to the third layer, which the yogis call chitta. Yeah, there's a difference between chit and chitta, and that's written with a C. So the second was deha, and the third is chitta. And chitta means, in the translation, often the mind. But in this teaching, we want to place together the mind as a mental faculty and the emotional mind, so to say. So the emotions and the feelings, emotional, mental, body, we could say. That is the chitta, the third layer. So what happens here is, when we identify with the chitta, then we live in the world of our mind, of our thoughts, and of our emotions. Meaning, we believe that our emotions is what we are. If sadness enters, then we are sad. That's our whole world becomes sadness. If anger enters, our whole world becomes anger. If joy or whatever comes, then that. Or if you have thoughts about I'm smart, or I am stupid, or I'm competent or incompetent, I'm happy and sad and so on, those would be the same. So mental and emotional body would describe those layers. And when you only believe in that, you're like in a roller coaster, because emotions just come and go naturally. Not many of us have any control over emotions. And if you watch closely, not even about our thoughts. Thoughts come and go. It's like the nature of the mind. Emotions come and go. Sometimes they are triggered by so-called outside things, but that's also because you have a past where you programmed yourself, in a sense. So you react for a reason to something. And if the identification with that is too rigid, then you're like pushed into that turbulent ocean of feelings, and inevitably there are good times and bad times. And to get out of that, it helps to start realizing that you are not your thoughts, you are not your feelings. I sometimes bring that example with the tomato or potato box, that's how I call it. So imagine you as a box, and then you put potatoes in, and then you take the potatoes out, you put tomatoes in, and you think you are the potatoes, and then you put the tomatoes in, you think you are the tomatoes, and then you put sadness in, you think you are sadness, and then you put joy in, you think you are joy. But you are rather the box, the container that holds those emotions instead of the emotions itself. So in other words, emotions just come flowing through the body and leaving again, like any thought. A thought comes, it arises, it disappears. Very natural way of how life flows. The difference between thoughts and feelings is, in that sense, not so big. It's more that thoughts have a more linguistic component, or logical linguistic component, where feelings are more a vibration with more affective charge, you could say. So they both operate on a very similar level. They are not on a physical realm, they are more on a more subtle realm.
Would you consider shame a feeling or a thought?
Like shame, there was a question, would you consider shame a feeling or a thought? I would consider it as both, as an emotion that arises, but most of the time triggered by a thought. So there's a thought, and often they interact very strongly with each other. So there's an urge of something rising up, then there's the thought of, oh, that is, and then conditioning kicks in. I feel ashamed of being whatever, naked or whatever in front of people. And then there's the feeling again, and that triggers the thought going further down the road. And so it's like increasing each other. And that's happening often. So often a thought starts actually, and then an emotion is triggered by that. But there's sometimes emotions which just arise kind of out of nowhere, and it doesn't need a thought to be there as an emotion. Also, what I, from experience, realized is that emotions have almost always a body experience, meaning some feeling is happening inside, so a tingling or vibration or a physical, tangible feeling. And thoughts are more subtle, they are just stories and more intellectual, logically. But sometimes we also think we have an emotion. We think an emotion. And we don't have that in the body. It's just the head spinning around. Yeah. So,
one more question.
Yeah.
When you differentiate thoughts and emotions, you said emotions connects more with your body, you have a physical sensation.
yes.
When you don't have that, do we say, okay, it's just a thought, or could be also a possibility you kind of disconnect
Yes.
from your body so you don't have the sensation, although you have the emotions?
Yeah, exactly. So the mind has the ability, and that's why we speak about those layers. So there was a question, if you can disconnect from your body and still have an emotion, but don't be aware of it, kind of. And the mind has the ability, that's why we have this teaching, mind in the sense, the eye maker, in yoga called ahamkara, the eye maker can expand and can contract. So to use the language right, when we would contract the mind, it would go more into physicality, into matter, into things. So it inhabits the body, a sense of that's me. but the mind has the ability also to leave the body of, no, that's not me anymore. And that happens when you disconnect strongly from the body. So you still have the kind of experience of a strong emotion, but you don't have the feeling of the body anymore, because you cut kind of the connection because it's too intense for you to feel sometimes, or for whatever reasons. So that is possible for sure. But it's more that you can train to feel your body better and stronger. So that's a lot of yogic practices want to embody, feel the body more. Yeah. So that's called disassociation, when you disconnect from the body and you're still very aware of your mental stuff going on. Yeah. So what you want to do is to get back to the body. So there's a question, please. Open the mic and speak if you want.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. I'm just coming from a mindfulness teacher training, and
Yes.
I really love the topic today. And thank you for having me.
Sure.
I introduced myself as Eugenia Rachel, but I switched to Eugenia because
All right.
I've been carrying it for many years. So yeah, I think it's the disassociation comes as a defense, and it's you were getting into that direction probably, but it's better to invite first the feeling and to feel it and to breathe, to focus on your breath, and after a while you're going to decenter kind of naturally. That's the technique that works for me.
Thanks for sharing that. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. So especially in Tantra Yoga, we practice embodiment, meaning the body is our tool to experience this world, or one of the tools. And we always want to come to the body because the body lives in the present moment, the breath lives in the present moment. And if you connect to the body breath, you will draw your mind, which is scattered around or somewhere, wherever, you will bring it back into the center. So it's very helpful. And also in Tantra, I come to that in the end, we see everything as consciousness, as the so-called divine. And that includes, of course, the body. So we don't want to get rid of the body. We want to embrace the body. We want to embrace all the layers in the end. But let me come to that. There's a sequence. So first of all, we have to understand we are not this stuff. We are not only the body. We are not our thoughts. We are not our emotions. And the next layers. And then later on, we realize, and we are simultaneously, we are all of that. But we will come there. I'm spoiling. Yeah, so I'm not the biggest expert in what happens when someone disconnects from their body. But I know it helps to use practices that are breath-based and feeling-based. It's one key. Thanks for sharing, Virginia. Good. Let's go to the... No, I want to be one more time, one more sentence in the Chitta. So there is a teaching which is called the first order and second order reality. And that is quite an important teaching. The first order reality is everything we experience before we have a thought about it, before we label it. I call it the raw, unfiltered experience through the five senses, sense perception. And the second order reality is our mind giving it names and making a story about it. So imagine, I wrote that in my book, for example, you are on a motorbike, you drive, you have the wind, you have this feeling of something in your gut, like, wow, this is intense, or whatever you imagine what you have. And that is first order reality. You feel a body sensation experience. And the second order reality is you speak about it and say, I was driving on a motorcycle and I had a feeling of being fully alive. So your mind speaks about an experience, but you're not in the experience fully immersed. That would be the difference, first order and second order reality. And many people, many times live in second order reality. They just live in the mind world speaking about things, but not feeling them actually at this moment of time. Yeah, I'm afraid of spiders. To say that, to think that is different than touching a spider. It's completely two different experiences. So what we want to do is to come from second order, from the mind world, into first order, real, direct, unfiltered, raw experience. Yeah, that's the mind layer, the citta. All right, let's go to the fourth layer, which is called prana. Everybody knows that word. Prana is life force. And life force is already not personal anymore. Life force is weaving through the whole of the universe and animating the whole of the universe. So, like your breath, it's not personal for you. The air that enters your body, you share with the whole world. You inhale breath from the outside world into your lungs, and you exhale it from the inside of your lungs to the world. So, like we share the air together to breathe, we share prana to live. So it transcends personality. Just to clarify that. And when you identify with the vital body, the body of prana, life force, you would speak or think in terms of, I feel energized, or I feel drained, or I'm alive, or I'm very, destroyed or something. So that is the energy state you could translate as, you could say. That is the energy state you feel. And sometimes we over-psychologize our energy state, and then we make big stories of why we feel drained. And then we make a psychological reasoning, which leads to the craziest outcomes, but actually just your energy was low. And that is the reason. So you could have done a little bit of energy practice and you would be good, but you get lost in the mind saying 100 million things why you are feeling drained or energized. So it's per se no problem to identify with that layer, but if you misunderstand that layer as something different than it is, then it can cause or lead to some suffering, because you try to fix your state of energy, which just is like it is. You can work on that level with, of course, pranayama, breath work, that heavily influences the energy state. You can also influence it through food, through exercise, sleep, relaxation. So all of those are the cure, so to say, if you're not leveled in your energy, not balanced. And that's why it's also interesting to know where is your current identification, to know where to work on to bring it back to balance. Does it make sense? Let's go to the last layer. Shunya, the so-called void. So this is a bit more subtle layer. It's not so easy to understand for some. The void is sometimes called emptiness. Is that layer when you are in deep meditation, where where there's not much noise, let's say, where there's quite a stillness and peace. So the mind is not talking too much, or you're not paying attention to it at least. And you're not disturbed by anything. There's no feeling of lack, or there is no clear, like the other senses and layers, they almost disappear. Like there's no sense of body, not so much at least. The emotional states are not in fact affecting you. So that is kind of that very deep layer of peaceful emptiness. And some people are very afraid of that, because you suddenly lose the sense of I'm here, this body, and I belong here, and that's who I am, my character. And that's suddenly disappeared, and you're in this empty, vast space. Some people call that also the bliss layer, because it can be quite beautiful, because there are no problems anymore. It's just empty, vast, problemless space. But some others also are afraid, because they not have this clear boundary of that's me, because it's just empty and infinite. So the yogis would describe this layer as the most fundamental layer of existence. So in other words, you could understand that as space or potential. And everything is born out of that empty space and comes into being from that space. But it also disappears or dissolves back into that space, which we will call the emptiness. Some traditions even end there and say that is the final goal of a spiritual journey, to enter this space. When we go into bed at night, we also enter that in deep sleep. That's why you don't have a memory. There's nothing happening. You cannot have a memory of infinite emptiness. I mean, memory is infinite and empty. So it feels like nothingness, because it is. And yeah, one second. A way to get there is for sure deep meditation. Was that your question? And it can also come with a pitfall, and I'll tell you that in a second. Let's see if you have a question.
Well, no, I wanted to mention that probably it will be a state, one of the examples when it occurs, it's the deep states of meditation.
Yes, right.
One of the states, and I was curious, what other altered states of consciousness can cause this?
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I believe for sure drugs can, death can. So when you lose the senses and the body, you enter that space. And deep meditation can, quietness of mind. In the Yoga Sutras, it's called either dhyana, like deep meditation, or samadhi, one of the first stages of samadhi. That would be shunya, the void. And it's a pretty beautiful space, but often the pitfall comes here. If you over-identify with that space, you can come to that idea that you're an enlightened master because you got there, and so-called spiritual bypassing can appear, that you identify with, I am that emptiness, I am that pure space, and you withdraw from the body and from the world. And you find yourself something a little bit better than everybody else because they don't have that feeling. Because once you get there, you feel, wow, that's so much more real than all those worldly things. So that is the little pitfall. And what did I write down here? Thoughts like, I'm the void, or I'm not from this world, or God is speaking through me, or something that would be like connecting to that space and then letting it flow, and then imagining you are superior to other people or some others. So those are sometimes called transcendentalists, people who want to transcend the worldly experience and just be in bliss states. And that can get addictive, and you don't want to be only seeking for that experience of pure nothingness bliss. It is nice to be there, but the world is still here and you are still in the body. So you want to also integrate that. So meditation to get into bliss states is beautiful and nice, do it. But also you want to integrate that in life later on when you're not there anymore.
Is that nirvana, or it's a little bit different from it?
I'm not 100% firm which tradition defines nirvana how, but I believe the answer is yes. Nirvana, as I learned it, is that final state of emptiness, and that would be shunya in the tantric tradition, yes. So that's also where the most subtle sense of being comes from and goes to, or let's say where it always is, and where from the world emerges. That is the stillness which is in all things and all noises, inherent. And you can actually tap into that anytime. Sometimes you have people who stare into nothingness, you know those moments where you're like, you kind of lost, yeah, that's how people say it, I think. You got lost and I brought you back. It's like you just entered that space of emptiness for a second, and then someone wants to bring you back because it's a weird thing in society. You have a question?
I'm strangely really attracted to this emptiness thought right now, and I would be connecting it with various experiences, mine and perhaps those that I've heard of. And my question would be, is this emptiness creative?
Well, the emptiness itself is not creative, but
that state of that emptiness, whether it has power of creation.
No. Well, yes and no.
Creation of miracles, for example, so, creation of materialization.
Okay, the question is, does the state of emptiness have the power of creation? Well, it has the power of creation, but it's not creating. It's that layer on which or in which things can be created. You can imagine it as the space where things can appear in, or people can walk in, or things can be made in. It's more that entity that holds everything. But the power of creation lives within it, like the power of, but not the created thing itself. Or the creation, the act of creation itself doesn't live in it. When we speak about creation, we have to go one layer down into the energy level, which is prana. That's already the most subtle energetic level. And then the void is empty. There's nothing happening except pureness. And sometimes we dip in from one into the other in meditation states.
When you navigate, what state is it?
When what?
When you navigate.
Levitate.
Levitate, no, navigate. Yeah, levitate.
I don't know. Okay, let's go to, we have our 5 layers, right? Yes. So, now we come to the 6th, which is not a layer, and the end of my little talk. The 6th non-layer layer is chit. Like shunya, that was the 5th, and chit. Not shit, chit. That would be the final non-layer layer. Why do I say non-layer? Because it transcends all layers. It is beyond all layers, and it is all layers at the same time. And chit would be, in our modern language, awareness or consciousness or presence. And that is the very bottom of our being. Being is another word for it. So it doesn't go deeper, but because it is beyond our description, we cannot speak about it. Consciousness is inherently self-aware of itself. That's the nature of consciousness, and that's it. There's no more to say about it. It can't be, because all labels just trying to put it into a corner, but it is infinitely more than we can speak about it, and yet nothing of all that. So just go with that. Awareness is the bottom of our being. And within awareness, all those 5 layers are created. And we have the experience of identifying more or less with those layers. And the more we contract, the further we go up to the first layer, which is stuff. And the less we contract, the more we expand, we would slowly come closer to our essence, which is consciousness, which is awareness, which has no attributes or description, no form. And that is the yogic teaching, that we want to embrace the essence, but at the same time, simultaneously identify or see which layers exist and where am I at the moment, like how contracted I am in my experience. Do I think I'm my stuff? Do I think I'm my body? Do I think I'm my thoughts, my emotions? Am I prana, the energetic dance of the universe? Am I the emptiness? Or do I completely drop all layers and I'm just consciousness aware of itself? And there's nothing wrong with identifying, as long as you don't have a problem with it. So if you have a lot of things and you enjoy your things, and you don't care about suffering, or you don't suffer, then it's fine. Enjoy your life. This teaching only comes into play if you actually have a suffering, or if you have a problem in your life.
Who are those people who have problems?
Exactly. Where are the people who have no problems? That's why the yogis are around and say like, hey guys, let's do it this way. Have a look here. So, and when you slowly understand, I am pure consciousness having an experience of one of those layers, you can relax a little bit into just that, the experience that is present right now. If you don't believe anymore, that's me and only that, the things, the body and so on, then you can relax a little bit more and take flow of life with a bit more ease.
There's something missing.
What is missing?
There are a few things missing, and one of the most important things which is missing right now in those layers is subconsciousness. That's the essence.
So
And
look,
that's also the layer that we are experiencing, but we are not experiencing it consciously. It's the layer that actually is influencing.
So we have, I just say it again because they might not hear you. So she said there's something missing in this map, the subconsciousness, for example.
I might be wrong, it's just...
No, yeah. So what I want to point out that don't try to fit the whole of your life experience into one map. And we're speaking about a map here. The 5 layers is one map, which a yogic teaching gives for you to navigate with more ease through life. So you cannot take just one teaching and say, this is incomplete. You have to understand, yes, for sure it's incomplete, always, like every teaching. It's one teaching that can guide you towards, can point you towards one experience, or to one aspect of whole world experience. And of course, maybe it doesn't fit with the modern psychology terms of subconsciousness or something, and that's totally fine. So just as a tip, don't try to bring all the ideas and teachings and all your knowledge together to one working system. It probably doesn't exist. So take what you can take out when it's beneficial for you, take that out and see, can I work with that? And maybe if you need to fit the subconsciousness in, where would it fit, and does it make sense to fit it in or not? Yeah. But it's like one teaching of many that can guide you towards one thing.
So how does this fit into like compassion for other people? So like, let's say someone else gets into a car accident and is upset because they,
Yeah.
wrecked their car, or they got robbed, or they, had this bad experience. Like how can we like still be like empathetic and compassionate, but also like not get all wrapped up in the layers with them,
Yes.
but still be like caring.
Yeah. Did you hear the question? Yeah, okay. How can you? Good. Well, first of all, it's not primarily a teaching of compassion yet. When you understand that other people are caught up in one of those layers, you very naturally tap into your compassion. Oh no, this person thinks, really believes truly this car is their own body, self, and I just damaged them. And so you create this natural connection of, oh no, they are unfortunately caught in a misidentification and they are suffering through that belief. So, well, at least you can create compassion through that. What you might don't want to do to educate them about the 5 layers in your car crash. So like, don't worry, it's just a car, you're identifying yourself with that, but it's not your awareness, don't worry. You cannot be crushed. But you can at least maybe feel a bit more into their experience. And you can also reflect your own in that. Does it help you?
And I'm just thinking, like, this happened where the neighbor crashed into our car and we were really upset about it.
Yeah.
Because it created a big pain in the butt for us. But, like, they were just like, oh, it's no big deal. And then that made us think, like, that they were jerks.
Yeah. Yes. So the thing is, it doesn't need to make you not emotionally react. You still can react emotionally however you want or however it happens automatically, yeah. And that is not a problem. And you can still care about your things and everything. So that teaching doesn't say, don't have those feelings anymore, or don't be upset when your stuff is stolen or what damaged. Just that teaching is about, here's a chance to get aware that's not you which was damaged. And we come to the ground of being, the last layer, chit, which is the essence of our being, that cannot be damaged. All other layers can be so-called disturbed from the outside or life, but the bottom, which is the essence, cannot, is unborn and cannot die. Cliff.
Thank you for doing this, Cedric. In the description that you just put forth, to understand that the victim associates the property as them, and one can see that they are doing that, how does one not judge them or judge themselves as more awakened and in some dimension better?
Yes. I already know which are my next 6 satsangs are. We will go through the 6 realms, and one of them is the God realm, where you imagine yourself more awake and smart and how to deal with that. Well, Cliff, I think you can't control your thoughts, neither your reactions and emotions. You can work on them and have good intentions and You are at the point where you are. So you can recognize and recognize. And that is me identifying with that layer. That's great. I celebrate that. And that's all right. Yeah. And you still keep the intention of awaking more deeply. Yeah. So, one, you recognize, and second, you pray for the intention of awaking more deeply. So you still direct your being into, I want to come more towards myself, towards a full awake version of myself. But I'm fully embracing and allowing where I am and what I am in this moment, in this contracted form. And that's what it is. And then thoughts come up and thoughts go. What to do? Does that help?
Yeah, it does. It sounds like love the pain in some ways. Love the fact that I am where I am, and pray for more stillness.
Yeah. I'm not sure how you, what you mean with stillness, but you mean that those
Consciousness,
thoughts?
the
Yeah.
low, the chit.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I call it stillness. Sorry.
Yeah, don't worry. Great, yes.
But that's a real issue. That's why I asked that. That's something that I definitely struggle with. When I can see that the suffering that someone is enduring is at a level of identification with themselves as something. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that. Well, you can also open your heart towards compassion for them and for yourself. Like the moment you judge them for yourself and for them that they are in this contracted version of themselves. Yeah, I would make it into a practice. So every time that appears, you remind yourself of the practice, which could be appointed to something specific, like a compassion mini meditation or a dropping into pure awareness or just dropping into body sensations or something like that. So to remind yourself more and more throughout the day, I am my mind claims and I'm not that. My mind wants to claim that, but I'm not. I'm infinitely more. I'm all layers together.
Thank you.
Yes. Please, Eugenia. Oh,
Yeah, I hope you can hear me. It's a little loud here. You actually answered that. I was going to say that if something like that happens to me, I was going not to focus on the narrative,
yeah.
but go back to my breath and explore how that makes me feel, what that person did to me, and do loving kindness meditation for myself. Then go to a person that I like, then try to imagine to do the meditation to send love to somebody that I don't like. And in this way, I move to the expanded awareness. And how that relates to yoga, actually, I do the tree pose and meditate on how we breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide and get the oxygen from the tree and give the carbon dioxide to the and they bring the carbon dioxide from us,
Yes.
and how we kind of all in this together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the picture of this cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's open this for any questions if there are any left. Or just shares if someone else wants to share.
also want to share a little bit if like we are identifying ourselves with each layer, how we can sort of move a little bit down, eventually no longer identify ourselves for either layer
Okay.
which you are.
So how can we change our perspective? It's first of all a remembrance of this teaching. There are those layers, and realizing that you are in one of those layers. That is the most important and the first step. As soon as you realize, normally the grip of the mind should soften a little bit, because you intellectually also understand, oh, that's what my mind does. It identifies and claims. And so you can relax out of that. And then I would use a little practice like mindfulness practice or something to come to your body, because that is the present moment. So you get out of thinking, making stories about the future or about the current situation, and you just come to present moment awareness. And then as a final step, you could relax even deeper, but that needs already a certain experience of going into awareness itself. Should just, as Cliff called it, silence. But that could include also everything that happens. That would be the tantric teaching in the end. So number one is, I am not those layers, but then you realize everything that exists is just consciousness playing its own game within itself. So everything, all the layers, is also consciousness. I am eventually realizing that I am all of this. I am all layers. But you can be both, not identifying yourself as those layers and be all those layers at the same time. Maybe that was a bit cryptic, but for some people that made probably sense. Okay, is there any other question? Otherwise we already have an hour. Okay. Next time we will sing a mantra. Today I will close it here. I have planned a little meditation through the layers, but now it's already an hour, so I dropped that. And we do it maybe the next time. So generally, if you have a topic you really want to know, you can also write me an email or WhatsApp, and maybe I can bring that in. And otherwise, I'm really happy to see you guys and to make this a little bit into a rolling experience. It fills me with joy to stay in touch with some of you, online and offline. Okay. Hmm.